this is not a quick path to success. But once you get to the point that it's really working and it's sustainable, it's the best path. There's no better path to growth that I've seen.
Well, hello, everybody. Larry Sprung here, and I have the pleasure today of being with Thomas Kopelman. I am so excited for this conversation. He's somebody I've known and respected for a long time, and he's the co-founder of All Street Wealth. And I'm looking forward to sharing his story with you because I think there are a lot of things that he's doing that applies to all of us as entrepreneurs and business people. So welcome to the show, Thomas.
Yeah, Larry, thanks for having me. Glad to finally be here chatting with you. I mean, I don't know how long we've known each other. It's got to be a few years on social media at this point. So long time coming for sure.
Yeah, I've been talking a lot about FinTwit this year, so we've had a lot of guests from FinTwit, but it's a great community, and you're one of the things that makes it great. So I'm excited
Thanks.
for this conversation today.
Appreciate it. Me too.
Yeah. So listen, Thomas, we're going to talk, we'll get into what you're doing with All Street Wealth and some of the techniques and tactics that you're using currently. But,
Yeah.
just so people understand who you are and a little bit of background about how you got to that point, because I think the entrepreneurial journey is so fascinating. Can you share a little bit of background with our audience and our listeners about,
Yeah.
how you got from where you were to where you are today? And then we'll dive into where you are today, obviously.
Totally. I'm probably going to go a little farther back than what normally would be, but I think it kind of shares how I got here. But for me, I mean, honestly, my whole life, basketball was my life. I was a very good basketball player in high school, went and played in college. And my whole life, it was going to be play college basketball, go play overseas. And that was the basically what I wanted to do. And then got to college, got hurt, and really just was burnt out and was like, maybe basketball isn't really what I want to do anymore. And so went to Butler University, did every internship I possibly could do, from consulting to Eli Lilly, to startup. Basically did 6 internships, and I walked away from all of them like, gosh, I just don't want to work at all in my life. Like, I hate all these jobs. And now stepping back, what I realized is I just wanted to impact people and feel the impact, right? When you're in a big corporate job and you're working your way up, you hand a project off and you don't really think about it. And I was wired to know that if I worked really hard, I could feel the impact and I could succeed, right? That's what
Sure.
I was able to do through basketball. And I basically ended up knowing that, like, my favorite job I had done is I was training people, basically physical fitness, as well as, like, high schoolers in basketball. And I was like, I just love this. Like, I love that impact. And it just fell in my lap to end up in financial planning. It was one of the offers I got out of college. I went to a broker dealer and I hated it. I was there and I could see the impact that financial planning had, but I knew this wasn't the right place. And I was all about, like, I want to create content. I want to, educate people. I want to use that to drive people in. And their whole thing was, no, you go to, networking events, you go to volunteer opportunities, you call everybody, and you say, come meet with me. Let's see if there's any synergies. And I was just like, if financial planning is this valuable, why am I selling to everybody versus attracting people who need my help? And I
Right.
knew the best way to do that was by just educating people through social media, right? Like, I spend a ton of time learning from, CPAs and estate planning attorneys and just people in a whole bunch of different areas. Why couldn't that work for me? And to be honest, there wasn't very many people doing this successfully in the financial planning industry 5 years ago, right? I got to work with Justin Castelli. He was one of the people that was able to do this. You had the Ritholtz guys, but in general, there wasn't that many, and there still aren't, right? If you look across the
Right.
industry, I always ask people this. I'm like, can you name 10 people who are doing really well with social media marketing in the financial planning space? Nobody ever gets to 10. Is there any better industry that has an opportunity when we know it works in literally every single other industry? So basically, I got to work with Justin for a while. He didn't really want me to work there. He didn't really want any advisors, but he was nice enough to say, like, you can come be here, learn from me a little bit, because I wasn't ready to start my own firm. And then we were a year and a half in, and he was just like, dude, like, you've learned everything you're going to learn from me. You're ready to go start your own firm. You should go do it. And I was really nervous. I mean, I was 25 when I went to go
Right.
launch my own firm. Definitely didn't feel like I was ready for it. But his big thing was, like, if you ever need me, I can help you through whatever it is. And I was like, okay, it's nice to have that kind of mentor, that back support. But I think what I learned is that, like, I just want to have challenges, and I want to know that like if I work hard enough, I can kind of get through that. And I don't think there's any better sink or swim than you're either going to make no money or you can make a lot of money. You choose whether you're going to work hard, you're going to do the actions that you know are going to produce results. And so now, things have changed a lot. When I launched All Street about 3 years ago, I worked with, 100 to 200,000 of income, young, family or just married couple. And the more and more I learned and created, the more that I realized like I loved working with people like me, people who are business owners. They have a lot of moving pieces, complexities, maybe multiple businesses. And so I've just really pivoted to go down that lane of serving entrepreneurs for a bunch of reasons. One, most advisors don't do it. They're not even business owners themselves. They don't know how to run a business, and
Right.
they don't know tax planning, right? Like the average client coming into me right now, like I'm working on a client right now this week, they paid 1.3 million in taxes last year, right? Like most of our clients are paying 250 to $1 million in taxes a year. Tax planning is going to be the number one thing they look for. And it's not that it doesn't exist among CPAs, right? Like CPAs do it. They just have a really hard time of selling it. And there's just not enough CPAs available out there that you can find that do this really great tax planning. And so I was like, well, I'm going to build this in house. I'm going to bring an EA in. We're going to really specialize in a process around helping business owners understand how to optimize their business, how to pay themselves, how to optimize taxes. A lot of them have spouses who have jobs in tech and they have equity compensation. So just a lot of moving pieces. So I just keep adding and building my firm in a way to just specialize in working with that specific segment of people.
Yeah, and I think that's great. And I think there are a lot of great CPAs out there. They tend to be backwards looking instead of forwards looking, and part of that I think is just due to the time crunch and the demand on their time, and part of it's that they've just never thought about looking out that far. So
Well,
kudos to you. It's something that we do here as well. You've been, and you talked about it a little bit, very transparent about your practice growth through the use of Twitter. How did your initial interaction with another advisor kind of inspire you to lean into Twitter?
yeah, I mean, I actually I was always told never to use Twitter for it. Everybody said use LinkedIn and then, network on Twitter. And for a few years I just took that as like that was fact. And then I realized I was getting advice from advisors who have no clients from social media, who are in their 50s and 60s, who are working with a different audience. And I was like, man, I spend all my time learning on Twitter. I don't do that on LinkedIn. So maybe there's going to be people like me on here. So, I really took a bet. I started doing it and I had an advisor, I know who it is, I never say their name, who reached out to me and said, I hate your Twitter. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, you talk way too much about personal finance. Nobody wants to read that. And I went and looked on his Twitter and his most recent post was complaining about his fridge door. And I was like, okay, but you think people want to read about your fridge door, right? Like, I think people would much rather follow me and learn about one of the most important things in their life. Not saying that money is the most important thing, but it's in every area of life, and people want to improve their education and how they manage money. So I said, I'm just not going to listen to those people. There's still we've engaged with plenty of the haters on Twitter, right? We were just talking about this
Sure.
yesterday. I've realized there's a lot of negativity, but for every 99 good things, there's one bad. I'm not going to change my strategy about the one bad. Um, but for just the longest time, people just said, I've never met anybody who gets clients from social media. It doesn't work. And I just was like, I just don't see how that's true. That doesn't make any sense to me. So I started, doubling down on it. And my thought was, if I'm the most active, I'm going to win, right? We know that the sales funnel in financial planning isn't, wow, cool post, I got to work with him, right? The sales funnel is, hey, I am going through life. I'm learning from this person. Oh my gosh, my business just crossed this figure. My tax bill's never been this high. I don't know what to do with the extra money and I need to reduce my taxes. I need a financial planner, right? So my thought is if I educate people the most and when they hit that pain point, they think of my name, then that's the person that they're going to reach out to and work with. So I've just been following that strategy, and I have a lot of people who call me liars on social, right? Like they say, oh, you don't have a lot of AUM. And I'm like, go look at my website. I don't even advertise an AUM model. That's not what I
Right.
do. But last year I got to be on Kitsis podcast and write a blog post on Kitsis. And at that point, I think my revenue was $18,000 a month, which people are like, oh my gosh, that's so fast 2 years in. But we should do 65,000 a month in revenue by the middle of this summer. So by 3 years, I'll do somewhere between 65 and 70,000 a month in revenue, all through yearly planning fees. And I just credit all of that to, focusing on one channel and only focusing on really that one channel. Cause I think a lot of creators and a lot of advisors try to create everywhere.
Yeah, I
And,
agree.
it's like, I always equate this to sports, right? Like if your kid was like, I want to play college sport, and you're like, great, play five. It's going to be really hard to get really good at five sports. You're probably better off staying in one lane and really focusing on how to get good at that one thing. And I'm sure you have the same experience. Every advisor I know killing it on social is getting every single client from one channel, pretty much. Maybe they have a
For the
couple
most
stragglers, but 90 to 95% of them come from one channel.
Yeah. I agree. And, I think so many people struggle with the idea even of content creation. And I know you chatted with a good friend of mine, also, Matt Halloran, about how the rinse, lather, and repeat method makes creation a little bit easier than most things. What do you have to say to those that, have this misconception, misperception that there's such a heavy lift around content?
Yeah, it's funny. This is like a really huge topic, and I have a course coming out that's all about social media marketing, specifically for advisors, but it can be equated to really anybody creating. But one quote that really hit home for me is, "I want to see your best content, not your new content." And I think as advisors and really as content creators, you think your job is to create new content every single day forever. But I look back, and last January I had 7,500 followers. I have like 26,000 right now. The January before that, I had 2,000, right? So if I put out an amazing post a year ago, 2/3 of my audience never saw it, right? And,
Right.
maybe this is a little selfish towards my oldest followers, but if they've followed me for 2+ years and they have never wanted to work with me before, that's a little bit less important to make sure they get something new every day than it is to put the right content in front of the right new people. So I think you still want to, tread lightly on this. Like you don't want to be like, last Monday was this Tuesday I posted the same thing, next Wednesday I posted the same thing. Like that's not at all the structure I have. But I also want to say, hey, I have a really good blog post or a thread from last year. I'm going to repost it again this year. And then I'm going to cut it up into some individual posts. Then I'm going to turn it into a YouTube video. Then I'm going to put it in my newsletter and talk about it a little more. Like you can create once and distribute many times. And that can be cutting and changing, but also can be reposting it. Because in all reality, nobody remembers your post from 6 months
Right.
ago or a year ago. And if they do, then it was that good that it stuck in their mind. And how many things do we have to be retold or retaught in our life, right? Like we've all learned so many things.
Many, many
It needs to
times.
come back. And sometimes that's to hit you right in that perfect moment, right? Like, I could talk about getting your estate planning done and you could be like, oh, that sounds stupid. And all of a sudden your friend passes away and you're like, they didn't have one. Oh my gosh, I got to get it done. And because that
Sure.
post came at the right time, that pushed them to take that action.
Yeah, I agree. And, I think that you and I seem to have similar results in terms of where and when people reach out to you, right? The thing is, when they do reach out to you, I think similarly to us, they're ready to go. And, I think many times people don't see that difference that social creates. Meaning, when I started in this profession many years ago, it used to take 3, 4, and 5 meetings with a family to get them ready to go, where a lot of that's been condensed now because they already kind of got an idea of your online presence. Can you speak a little bit about that, how helpful that's been to you in your practice? Obviously, you don't remember what I remember because you weren't in the business then, but clearly, you're seeing those results, and I'm sure you're seeing a similar kind of progression that I've seen.
Yeah, I think this is the most powerful point about it is you can build trust through social and you can build a lot of trust, right? Like this amazes people. I have a higher conversion rate on people coming in from social media than referrals because referral says, "Hey, this is a good advisor. You should check them out." They're still coming in kind of with like, "Well, what if my friend doesn't know what a good advisor is?" Or like, "What if we have a different situation?" Right? Like through content, they've vetted me for most people say 6 months to a year. They've listened to all my podcasts. They're on my newsletter. They read all my tweets. Like, they follow me in every single way. And so most people, when they come in, are, well, what does the service look like? Is that what I want? And is the price right? Even though we put that on the website, most no. So I think that's been the powerful thing. A couple of years ago, it was a longer sales cycle. Maybe it was one meeting. Like, does it make sense to have another meeting? Let's talk about some strategies. Right now, my process is come in, we speak for 30 to 40 minutes, and you make a decision from there whether you're going to work with us or not. And all of that growth has come from that process working really well. But I think it's one, because they came in with trust. And two, I think I built my first meeting to give them an exact feel of what it looks like to work with me. We talk about what we do in every meeting, what their homework is in between meetings, what a financial plan looks like, what we do beyond the financial plan when they become an ongoing client. What does every meeting throughout the year look like? What do we do before them? How does my team help? Who are they going to see in meetings? And so when they leave, they're like, oh my gosh, I normally meet with advisors and they say, hey, do this with your investment portfolio, do this, but I don't know what it even means to look like with them. When they leave the
Right.
meeting with me, they say, I know exactly what that service is, and that's what I want, or that's too much for me, or whatever. But they can make an informed decision.
Now, is it that one-sided, or are there situations where, they may be like ready to go and you may be sitting there thinking, hey, this I'm really not a good fit for them. They'd be better served by somebody different as well, right? Because I think it's important as an entrepreneur to know who's a good fit and who's not. Because I think, to your credit, if you want to be able to be lean and mean and be able to, serve those people that you want to serve really, really well, you also have to know who to say no to too, which sometimes is tough, especially in the earlier stages. But I think that is so important, especially for any advisor, really at any level. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. And that's why maybe a year and a half ago, we created you can't book a meeting to work with us. So, like a lot of advisors, you can go to the website, book a meeting. For us, you have to apply to work with us and answer a bunch of questions, because I got into the point where, like, even though it was probably like 75, 25% of the meetings I would have known ahead of time it wasn't a good fit. And I don't want to spend all my time in prospect meetings because we're doing deep planning that requires a lot of hours. I need the free time to do that. So people apply, and from there we say good fit, refer them out, right? And based on that, we'll send them the referrals if they're a retiree, if they're whatever. But that's really important. And then we do have people we meet with and decide they don't. And I had somebody who just last week reached out and said they were ready to move forward. And I said, hey, to be honest, like I don't think that we're the right fit for what you're looking for. You don't really want personal and business planning. You really just want a tax plan. And here's a couple of good CPAs who can go do that for you. I just don't think this is going to align well, and we're not going to change our service for you. We give the same service to every single client, the same type of reviews. We go through the same things. We review everybody's tax returns. We do end of year tax planning. You get a new financial plan every year. If somebody wants to deviate from that, that's great. There's other businesses who will do that for them.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's so vitally important. And, we had Josh Brown was my guest on episode 180, who I know you know. And, he gave up Twitter, but he was also, formerly known as the Reform Broker on Twitter. And he's spoken a lot about being present in front of people in their feed. And then when the person has an event in their life, like you were talking about earlier, right, with the estate plan, and then a friend passes away, then they call you. What's your perspective on helping other people understand, being active in their feed and the importance of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why I love doing these type of podcasts. I think one way for me to educate is doing this. I think another way is that, like, I'm very open about our business, my strategy, what the growth looks like. Like, I want people. I get a ton of advisors that reach out and say, like, thank you for doing this. Like, I didn't know anybody else was doing this, and you gave me the like confidence that if I go work really hard, I can make this work, which I think is really cool. I kind of want to pave a little bit of a path to say this does work, right? Like I know there's all the statistics. I know you talk to other people and they say it doesn't work, but there's also these people over here, like both of us, Rachel Camp, Jacob Turner, Mark Ciccini. Like there's a big group of people who are actually doing this well and succeeding at it. The problem is that most people give up so fast, right? Like
Mhm.
this is not a quick path to success. But once you get to the point that it's really working and it's sustainable, it's the best path. There's no better path to growth that I've seen for anybody else. I mean, you look at James Canole doing this through YouTube, right? He can't hire advisors fast enough. He brought in 100 million in 9 months from YouTube last year, and they have grown significantly faster, all because he's found a channel that works for him and he's doubled down on it. So I would say like podcasts, I'd say I talk about it on Twitter. I share how I do it. that's why we're putting out this course. Is I've been doing a lot of consulting for advisors, like just like, let's do one meeting, let's do two meetings. You come in with all the big things. I'm going to help you get ready to go. It's not going to be like, monthly coaching, whatever. And everybody has the same questions and they're doing the same things wrong. And I was like, why don't I just put this into a package course that myself, Rachel, and Trayton are all doing together and really talking about all these concepts, because I think package learning is really helpful, right? I think about like golf. I'm trying to get better at golf. I can look up all these videos about what things to do better, but how do I boil that together to be one thing? I have no clue. I literally don't. I'm going to hire a coach. That's going to be great. But for this, right, like I can help package it to people. Here's what to think about. Here's what marketing really is. Here's what personal branding is. Here's how to start. Here's how to grab attention. Here's how to repurpose. Like I can take them through that package learning where I think that can help multiple people, not just the 5 to 10 a year I consult with.
Right. Yeah, you get to scale it a little bit better. And I had a guy by the name of who was great, Kevin Espiritu of Epic Gardening. He was episode 185. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's transforming the space of gardening using social media. And, what do you think that others can take from both of you who are taking something that exists, right? Tax planning, invest. This is not something new, but basically what you are doing is taking it, repackaging it, putting it out there in a understandable and intelligent way for others to pull in a new audience. And I think that this is something that's so powerful that can be used by so many different businesses out there. Do you agree? And
Yeah,
how
I
do they
think
use how would they approach that?
Yeah, I think we live in like this information age where, to be honest, like we're self learners, right? Like the driven people of this world are like all the information's there. They're going to choose to want to go learn it. And so I look across, like there's so many jobs. Like a lot of my clients are content creators. They're business owners and they've grown it through content. They have coaching, they have different businesses, etc. Really any single industry where people are buying your brain, right? Like, you know, that could be working out. It could be, I'm talking about like a golf coach. It could be tax. It could be estate planning. It could be financial planning. Like all of these are people are buying your brain to help them, right? It's not necessarily a tangible product. Yes, you get a financial planner.
Right.
Yes, you get a workout plan, but really you're buying that person. People, I look across and everybody's doing marketing, right? When in reality, we're doing personal branding because marketing is trying to sell, right? You try to sell t-shirts, you try to sell a product. Personal branding is here's what I know, here's who I help people with, here's how I help them, here's stories. If that's what you need, then you can reach out to me and I can help you do it. And I think that's where a lot of advisors fail is they just they don't think about what they're doing, right? And there's a few I'm never going to say any names, but there's a few like that. And everything they talk about is a pitch about them, right? Here's
Right.
why clients love me. Here's what we do. Here's this. Here's that. Like it's all about you or me, when marketing should be all about you, right? Like my job is to speak to somebody. Like just this last weekend, I had somebody message me and says, I feel like every post you write is about me. And he's like, well, maybe that's probably why your Twitter works. I'm like, that's my goal, right? Like
Mhm.
Train was the one who really told me this. He goes, when I write my content, I'm thinking about one specific person I know and I'm writing exactly to them because there's going to be a lot of people who identify that, right? That's what the value of having a niche is there's a specific person, problem, pain point, goal, et cetera, that you're going after and let people relate to that. Because when you're just trying to talk about finance, and that could apply to 80-year-old grandma retired, could apply to 24-year-old, young guy, can apply to 40-year-old entrepreneur. Like you're actually really going to you're going to end up talking to nobody and you're going to get no results from it.
Right. I agree. I think it's that's important, and consistency, as you've spoken about, I think is so important. It's probably one of the most important to the personal branding and content. How do you plan out your marketing? How do you, or I should say, personal branding, and how do you schedule that out? How do you go about kind of figuring that out?
Yeah, no, I love that. So I get very, very detailed in my organization of this, and I'm not that organized of a person, so it's kind of surprising. But like, I'm coming off doing like 80 threads in a row every day, but Sundays I've written a thread, and I basically just went through and I just by the day I list out what that topic is. I link it to a Google Drive with the article I wrote, and then I go schedule it in Hype Fury is the solution I use, and then well, I guess take a step back. I believe short form content is extremely important to stay active. And I think people sometimes ignore that, or they only think about short form content. I think long form content is how you win and how you really get business, is because here's a fact, here's really deep understanding of something I know you're going through. You can't do that every day, multiple times a day. So you stay
Right.
active in front of people with the short form content, and then you really drive them into, relating to you and that you know them through long form content. So I always weave the two together. So I do scheduled 3 short form pieces of content a day, and then long form. Typically, I do 2 threads a week. I have a long YouTube video and I have a podcast, and then I have a short YouTube video. So I basically have a new 1 minute, if not longer, long form piece of content every day, and then 3 short form. And then I finish a meeting or like I end the podcast. I'm like, ooh, I have a really good thing I'm going to post. And I go post it. And then with my scheduler, what's cool about Hype Fury is like I can schedule every day I want to post at around 7:45, around noon, and around 5. I just go type stuff up and it just throws it to the next available time for me. I don't have to like schedule it there, which is easy. And it'll also show me, hey, here's your best performing tweets. Oh, that tweet from 3 months ago looked really good. Let me reschedule that. Or hey, that one did well, but I know I could slightly tweak it and improve it. And so then I go back and I do that with a combination of new plus repurposing.
And how far out are you scheduling this stuff? Is it a week, a month, 2 months? How far out do you have that kind of calendared out that if you went in there today and put something in that it would then put it to the next available slot? When would that be, at any given point in time?
Yeah, so right now is the shortest it's been in a long time. It's like end of July because I've been really focused on the threads for so long. But before that, I mean, it's been that July since like last maybe October, September. So I what I've been doing is I'll carve out like one Friday afternoon a month, and I'm way better in the summer because I go sit by the pool. And I
Right.
basically am like, I'm gonna spend 1 to 2 hours, and I'm gonna try to schedule 1 to 2 months worth of content. Some days I get 3 months, some days I get 2 weeks, right? Like, you have different creative days. But one thing that I learned from Justin early on was like, you can't just randomly do stuff. He's like, my biggest
Right.
mistake is that I didn't have any specific schedule. And so the first day I started, I had schedules, and I've never given that up. It's one thing that, advisors are always like, well, I got busy and I stopped. And I'm like, I just don't let that even be an option. Like I don't let it be an excuse. I'm going to be busy. I'm going to get it done. But that's why scheduling is helpful. Is so when you are busy is the time that you don't have to be scheduling.
Yeah, I mean, if you're out till July, if you can't get to it this week, it's not a big deal because you have a little bit of a cushion there. If you were out till 2 or 3 weeks from now, different story. So that certainly is helpful in not abandoning the ship, so to speak. In
Exactly.
doing that, one thing you've been, with the course you talked about, and really everything that you do, you're pretty transparent about, you know, why you do it, how to do it, sharing with other advisors and people in the community. And there are people out there, I'm sure, I've seen some of it, that would think you're crazy. Why are you sharing this with your competitors? And I've been kind of admonish for the same thing in other regards as well. But you clearly have this abundance mindset around that. What's your reasoning behind, what's your why behind sharing all of this, knowledge and expertise with, other people in the profession?
Yeah, I mean, I think a few reasons. I think one, that really isn't competition, right? If you look at how many good advisors there are in the industry, like we know what there's like a few 100,000 advisors. Let's take 5% of that and say those are good advisors that really care, they educate, they know planning. That's not enough advisors for all the people that are out there that need help. We know what percentage of people are advisors. It's still really low. So for one, I just don't think there's competition. I think everybody can serve a different audience and can do really well. And there's other. I mean, I know you serve some business owners. Plenty of other advisors serve business owners. There's plenty of business owners for us all to work with and help.
Right.
Two is I just wish there was a little bit more package learning for myself, right? Like maybe it actually worked out the best for me that there wasn't, because I've always been a self learner. Like you could throw the most important thing into me, but if it's not the right time, I'm not going to learn it. But when I need to learn things, I will go learn it deeper than anybody else, because I'm not okay with not knowing things deeply that I'm helping a client on or a thing that I'm doing. So I just wish there was a little bit more package learning. Like Justin gave me a lot of nudges and some good places, but there wasn't very many advisors to look up to. in that space. And I know when I wanted to go down this, I felt very demoralized and everybody said nobody's doing that, nobody's succeeding at it. And so I think, we should be sharing the people and the stories that are working. I think we look at, there's all the things of, hey, you grow up somewhere, you never saw anybody succeed or reach that level. Well, if you've never seen somebody ever do that, you don't think it's possible, right? If you
Right.
do see a lot of people doing it and sharing that they're doing it, you start to believe in yourself. And I think at the end of the day, like that belief is the difference, right? All my successful business owners I work with, they have a level of self belief that they always knew that this was going to be accomplished. And then the people who weren't successful were the ones that always doubted themselves, right? They always second thought or always, they were just like, I can't do that. So I would say those are probably the two main. I just think the other one is, I think I make plenty of money. I'm going to make plenty of money. If my business slows even somewhat because I'm helping other people who somehow got my clients, like I'm going to be just fine. And I just
Mhm.
love talking about this. I love helping people on marketing. Like I have office hours advisors come to where we talk about this kind of stuff. And I think sometimes we just, some of us are really lucky to have good people around us to be able to learn well, to be able to do well. There's a lot of people who don't have that. They're very siloed.
Agreed.
And, being a financial advisor alone is tough because there are tough years early on. You're always going to doubt yourself. And if you don't have other advisors around you who can relate, you just sometimes forget that a lot of people have gone through that same thing.
Yeah, I think those are great points. And, you've talked a lot about working to understand what you enjoy in the business and building around the other skills. And I think that this is so applicable to other businesses, clearly, our professional services and finance, but really other businesses, right? How can other business owners scale a little bit better, perhaps, with this type of philosophy?
Yeah, I think people are scared to offload things. And I think, some of it's control issues like, oh my gosh, whether you think you're the best at it, nobody else can do it as well. Or, I have to watch everybody do every detail. Like, you got to learn to let go of that as a business owner. And so my philosophy is like, it's these two circles, right? And it's like, what am I the best at? What do I enjoy the most? Where's that overlap? And how do I spend the most time there? And what I found is if I spend the most time there and I know these other things that I don't like and that other people are good at, and I get them to intersect there, and I just keep building that around my team, it's not going to be like three of us equal three. It's going to be three of us equal six, right? Because the
Mhm.
more that you're in the lane of the things, one, you're not good at, but two, that you don't enjoy, the more like you lose energy, right? Like I want to spend time in areas that like give me energy. And what I know that I'm really good at, and what I look at is like, where am I the top of the industry of? And I'm like, okay, marketing. And I think I'm really good at talking to clients and getting people to want to work with me. How do I spend the most time there? Right. And then there's a lot of great financial planners. I think I'm a very good financial planner. I think there's people who are going to be just as good and maybe they're going to like it even more. So how do I hire people in that lane? So that's why I brought on an EA. He knows so much about tax. He can help educate me on those things. I'm teaching him about financial planning. He loves being in the spreadsheets and analyzing things. Like I like knowing that information and how to explain to the client what to do. So he does all of that. I'm going to be, hopefully I have a meeting actually right after this with potentially hiring a full-time like ops person who will handle like all of the administrative work, all client follow-ups, making sure everything gets done. Because again, that's an area that is not my favorite. And there's people more organized than me. And so when I
Sure.
work with my business owners, a lot of the conversations we have is hiring, right? Who do we hire? When do we hire? How do we hire? And so, who to hire, this makes it easy, right? What do you want to do more of? And what do you want to do
Yeah.
less of, right? That's a hire. And I think for a lot of people, hiring early is better. We all have fear. Oh my gosh, what if I hire too soon? And then for a few months, I'm going to make less money, blah, blah, blah. Hiring is what's going to open you up to make more money. At the end of the day,
Right.
time and time again, that happens. I hired before I thought I needed a full time person. And then our business blew up. Like that 6 months, we went from, I think we were doing like 80,000 a quarter in revenue to then he's been now here for 6 months. This last quarter, we did like 124,000 of revenue, right? And that's just continually growing. And I wouldn't have been able to service all the client growth if I didn't have somebody full time. And it was because somebody said hire before you're ready. As a mentor of mine, he goes, you're there. You might not feel it, do it. And I was like, okay, this is a little scary, but we're going to do it. And it was the best thing for me. And time again, I hear that same story because if you hire too late, it's hard, right? Like
Oh, yeah, you
when you're
you're
that
fixing
busy,
problems then.
yeah, imagine being you're so busy that you barely have the time to work with the clients and you have to train somebody to do it, right? Like that's
Yeah,
more time. So when you have a little bit more
agree.
free time to train is the best time to do it.
Yeah, I agree. So important to find what your unique ability is and spend as much time doing that and delegating and elevating everything else because
100%.
it'll make it better for you. You'll be happier, you'll be healthier, and your team will be better, and your the families that you work with are going to be better off for it. So,
Exactly.
lot of joy from there, Thomas, and I appreciate you sharing. And we end each of our shows because we are the Mitlin Money Mindset. We're all about joy. So we end each of our shows by asking each guest the same final question, which is, what did you do today that brought you joy and put you in the right mindset for success?
Yeah. So one thing that's really important to my life, and I think running the best is, every morning I get up, I do some work, and then I go to the gym after that before I do meetings and everything. I always lift, I always cold plunge, I always sauna. And something about that to me just like really helps me come into the day like not stressed, which I think is really important. And part of owning your own business is creating your ideal schedule. I never do meetings before noon. So I have time to like get through everything, think through everything. And then the whole afternoon is meetings. And, that's been the thing that I found to really help me feel my best and give my clients the best.
Sounds awesome. And thank you for sharing that. And, we're going to have all of your information in the show notes, but if people want to learn more, connect with you, I may know the answer to this already, but what's the easiest and the best place for them to do that?
Yeah, the answer you would have thought, I would just say go to Twitter. I'm just at T Kopelman on Twitter. I'm very active on there. But Larry, I appreciate you having me on. I'm gonna have to get a time set up for you to come on my podcast, and we'll flip this side and talk about some financial planning things you love talking about.
Would love that. And I thank you for your time and thank you for your transparency and helping elevate our profession, the great profession that it is. Thank you for that. And enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, thanks, Larry. Have a good day.